So you might be wondering, how can I go about setting the tone for the rest of my day? What should I do when I first come into school to show and make sure that I'm being very productive? And how can I close out my day? That way I can ensure that my next day runs smoothly without having to require me to stay an hour, 2 hours past contract time. Well, today I'm going to be talking about the 15-minute coming in procedure and closing out routine that I use as a teacher and that I've taught many of my coaching clients to use as well. So with that being said, let's dive in. So before we dive into the closing out routine, I wanted to start off with my 15-minute morning routine. Now, this is the routine I have used for over 5 years now to confidently start out my day and to start my day off on the right foot. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but when you start off in a positive mindset and in a good energy and having, gratitude and happy for the day, oftentimes your kids will match that energy. Whereas if you come in and you're frazzled, your desk is a mess, and everything's falling apart, your kids tend to amplify that for you, good for better and for worse, and can kind of escalate how your energy and what your day is gonna look like. So that's why from the very beginning of my journey, I try really hard to set a really positive tone to my day in the classroom because I know how big of a ripple effect it can have on the rest of the day. So when I come in, one of the first things I do is I put my personal items away. This can look like my teacher bag, my tea. I usually set on my desk my keys, all that, my jacket. I like to put those away so they're ready to go and just out of sight, out of mind. They're not adding clutter to my desk. After I do that, I love to turn on technology. So this often looks like my personal computer, maybe my laptop, and then the smart board in the classroom. And I like to open up the Google folder I have that already has all the tabs I'm going to need for that day. So it opens with one click and I'm ready to go. After I like to open up technology, I like to turn on the lights. I personally have a couple of smelly stuff around my room. I have a Harry Potter one. That's one I love to set up, and since as long as, health-wise they are allowed with my students, I like to set those up, turn those on throughout the day or at the beginning so they're going throughout the day. After that, I like to do a lesson plan check. I like to make sure that my lesson plans are good to go for the day, and 9 times out of 10 they are. And then all of my materials are where they should be. The materials are out. I have the materials ready for the day, stuff like that. After that, I like to declutter my desk and set the goal for the day. I used to have a to-do list of 20 plus things that I had to do each day, and they would just happen every single day. But now I really started to focus on one main thing that I need to accomplish each day. So that can include Mondays, typically lesson planning. I'm lesson planning not for that week, but for the following week, and sometimes even 2 to 3 weeks out in advance. I'm gonna look at the resources I have from years past. I'm gonna look at the gaps in the curriculum, and I'm gonna write those lesson plans for the following week or wherever I left off. After that, on Tuesdays, I like to take those lesson plans and get any materials I need and get them ready. This can often look like sitting with my tea by the printer, printing out my entire prep for the next week. It can look like creating sites, whatever I need, or getting hand materials ready. Whatever I need for that following week is what I'm going to be prepping during that time. On Wednesdays, it's communication. I like zeroing out my inbox, zeroing out my class dojo, responding to any emails I might have forgotten, getting caught up on any PDs the district needs or any incentives or mandates they require of me. I like checking in with my team to make sure we're all on the same page if they need anything, that our lesson plans are up to date, and then, check in with admin if needed if they were checking in with something. And I also like to write my weekly newsletters those days for my families. On Thursdays, those are my grading days. I take all of the work that we have worked on so far that week, and I like to grade it that day. That way on Friday I can return it to my students and they can take it home. I try to have a quick turnaround rate with my grades, because I used to be that teacher that wouldn't grade until the night before report cards were due, and I would stress and pull all-nighters, have way too many energy drinks, and it was just not good. So now I consistently grade the work from that week, so I'm always staying on top of it, and I can return the work that we did that week to families, so there's a quick turnaround on the work we're completing and the feedback my students are getting. On Fridays are my catch-up days. So I'm an introvert. If I have everything done, there's probably some projects around the classroom I want to do, and some days I'm just having a week where I just need to de-people and not talk to anybody. So sometimes that's turning off my lights and decompressing for a bit. Whatever I need to get caught up on that day, that's what that is. Or maybe I didn't have a prep earlier that week, or maybe I had to cover someone else's class, maybe I had a duty, maybe I had grading, or not grading, I had PLCs, meetings, school functions, and so I have to roll that over. That's the day that I do that. So after I declutter my desk and I set the goal for the day, by the way, I like to use my happy planner for this. What I love about my happy planner is you can customize it. I've used a happy planner now since 2020, I think, 2019, I think. And I actually make my journal and my planner into one. The front side is the planner, the back side is the journal, and you can add paper to it. So I really like that, and it's a planner I really love using for as a business owner, as a CEO, and as a teacher, because I can use both and I can really customize what I'm looking for. So that's what I write my focus for the day is. And then at this point, honestly, I just know what I'm going to focus on each day because I've been doing it for such a long time. After that, I like to set the mood. So I noticed when I come in and I have nice music playing, whether that's upbeat and positive or calming and relaxing, I like to set the tone for the day and set the tone for when my kids come in. Setting the mood can look so different for different teachers. This could be music like I do. You could pray, meditate, moment of silence, pep talk, affirmations, whatever you need to get in that positive zone and that positive mood to start teaching and to impact future generations and reach the minds of your little ones, or big little ones. After you set the mood, I love to meet my students at the door. I just notice when my kids have someone there who's excited to meet them and see them and that they're there, whether that's my kinders, my second graders, and even when I've gone in to help in 6th grade and middle school classes, I like greeting at the door. I feel like it's really important. It really sets the tone for the day and the expectation that you are there, you are present, and you are in the moment with them. So that's what I like to do for my opening routine. All of this takes about 15 minutes, especially when I have everything prepped the day before. If you're missing what I'm talking about, make sure to go check out part 2 to leaving work on time, this free series that I'm doing. I explain more some of the classroom routines I use throughout the day to keep me ahead, that way I can leave at contract time. So now that we talked about what I like doing in the morning to set my day, let's talk about how to wrap up the end of your day routine. I talked about this earlier in my series, but essentially when I first started teaching, the other kinder teacher I was working with said something along the lines of how she couldn't believe, or it must be nice for that teacher down the hallway to always leave at contract time. Clearly she doesn't care as much as we do. And I had this limiting belief that in order to be a good teacher, I had to work a ton. But by the end of my first year, I wanted to quit. I wanted to give up. I didn't enjoy my life. I didn't enjoy my career. And I questioned all the schooling at that point. My master's degree I had put towards education. And so I really came up with this boundary of I need to start leaving at contract time. And when I made it a boundary, I make a habit and then followed up with the why. So for me, that was I will consistently leave at 3:15 p.m. because it's important for me to model to my students healthy work-life balance, or it's important for my students that they come in present and mindful each day. But I'm talking about the habit with that boundary I'm going to create and the why. And really, this routine is one of the main foundational pieces I incorporated that allowed me to leave at contract time. Instead of working 3-4 hours each day, I was able to leave because I had a closing out system. What I ended up doing is I actually had a playlist. I would hit play on my Spotify or on my Pandora or whatever on my personal back then music Apple account, and when the playlist was over, I knew I had to be out the door. And that was a habit I kept practicing over and over again until it became a habit and I didn't have to think about it. So what does that closing out routine actually look like? So first off, the first thing we do is we clean up, and this is typically with the students. The school day hasn't ended, and I talk about that more in part 2 of the series. So if you haven't checked that out, make sure to look at the description. I will link to part 2. But I typically have my student jobs help me with cleaning out the day and getting ready for the next day. So this can look like tidying up, putting away Chromebooks, getting materials ready, changing the date, clearing the board, getting the schedule ready for the next day, whatever that may be, cleaning the desk, straightening out the desk, cleaning up the classroom library, all the things I'm prepping for the next day. And my students are actually prepping for the next day, which is super nice. The second thing after I clean up with my students, let's say I've gone out to dismissal, I have pickup duty, so I stand out there with my kids, I've come back in, and that's when I do admin tasks. So my admin tasks are every single day, I get my inbox to 0. This is for me, my class dojo, and my email. So I like to use my inbox as a to-do list. If something is unread, that means I need to do it. As soon as it's done and I want to keep it, I put it in a label. If I don't want to keep it and it's not important, I delete it. So every single day, I make sure my inbox is at 0, first and foremost. So that takes 15 minutes, especially if you do it every day. And then if there's any like family requests, family reaching out, family messages, if it's outside of my business hours, I told my families I would be available for it. I respond right away, but I schedule it out for the next day. That way in the morning when I'm doing my opening up routine, I'm not worried about having to respond to families. I already did. And sure, in the morning, if you want to add another, admin tasks section where you zero out your inbox in your dojo, totally fine. But this is what I do. I make sure my inbox is at 0, so it's ready to go for the day. After that, another admin task I do is make sure my downloads are at 0. It's very easy to just shift through and search through your downloads to find things, but I found it takes a ton of time and a ton of money, and I got tired of going to my search bar on my Google Drive, on my downloads, and on my TPT looking for resources if I just would have had an organized digital system from the beginning. So that's what I do. Make sure my downloads are at 0, file things away that I might need for later. And I like to file papers away. Same with the digital, I mirror a paper version. Anything in my to file goes and gets put away and filed during my admin time, so I don't have to do it later during my prep. After that, I like to prep for tomorrow. At this point, my lessons are already done. So I look at my lesson plans, I look at my little file folder by my door to make sure my materials are there for tomorrow. I might pull them out and set them on my desk even to make sure they're ready for tomorrow, or I actually have a spot on my desk now where materials for that day go, or I might just leave it on the file folder and I have it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, so I could just pull it out when I need it. But I make sure those are ready to go, make sure there's not any last minute tweaks that I need, and then I like to reflect. As I mentioned, I like to have my happy planner where I have my planning section and then my journal section all in one binder. That makes it super helpful that I don't have to lug around 2 different ones. So I like to look at the focus that I did for that day. If I did it, great, I move on to the next one. If I didn't, I roll it over to the next day. And then I like to set a focus for tomorrow. So let's say it's Monday, I did lesson plans are done, I'm gonna cross it off. And then on Tuesday, I'm gonna write prepping lesson. lessons, and then I'm done. And again, having that catch-up day on Fridays is really helpful because if I have any interruptions to the flow of my day, I can just roll it to the next day. So I like to set a focus. If I like to journal, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I like to journal on the day what went well, 3 wins, 3 things I'm grateful for, stuff like that, 3 things I want to work on for the next day, or takeaways or lessons. I like to reflect that on the journal part as well as needed. So that wraps up how I personally make it easier to leave at contract time. We talked about my 15-minute starting out my day routine and my 15-minute close out my day routine. If you want to follow with next steps, first up, I highly recommend you follow wherever you are tuning in from, whether you want to subscribe to the podcast or listen to YouTube or subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm going to come out with part 4 of this Leaving Work on Time series. So this was part 3. If you missed parts 1 and 2, make sure to check out the description. I'm definitely going to link those so you can listen to this whole series on how to consistently leave at contract time. If you want to take it a step further, I highly recommend you check out the Ultimate Teacher Prep Guide. That guide is the top 10 questions I get asked in regards to managing your prep and maximizing your time on your prep to leave consistently at contract time. I answer those 10 questions, and I link to additional podcasts and YouTube videos if you want a further explanation. So you're not having to sift through my 130 plus weekly content I have now, so it's in one spot for you because I know how much content I've created and how overwhelming that can be. Second thing I highly recommend you check out is the Present Teacher Circle. The Present Teacher Circle is my personal community of new and first year teachers. And I've been asked this before. No, you don't have to be in your 20s. I have new and first year teachers from 20-year-olds to 70-year-olds. All are welcome, but I walk you through all the systems I incorporate into my classroom to consistently leave at contract time. We talk about classroom management, lesson planning and prepping, grading and data. We talk about communication between family, colleagues, and admin, and we talk about boundaries in the workplace and expanding your impact and creating that work-life balance. I incorporate all of that into one place, which I love. There's 11 modules that are already made. So if you really want to focus on lesson planning first, go to that module, take in everything and all the strategies I use, take what works for you, leave the rest. And then let's say next month you want to focus on classroom management, go check out those modules, take what you love, leave out the rest. And it's very much a choose your own adventure, because I realize after coaching teachers, we're all on different paths and different journeys. We all have different strengths. So there might be stuff in that program that you're really good at, you can skip that, but you don't need to do it in any order. The idea is you do all of the first modules first, or that you need, and then the making a schedule that you love, the impact, the teacher work-life balance, you do that one last, because I fully believe when you have systems that work for you and tailor them to make your own, which I highly recommend you do throughout the program. I use my systems that I've used for myself and with my coaching clients as inspiration, and I recommend you tweak them and use them and make them your own. And then we create a schedule using the systems you've already made it to create your dream schedule and your dream career, which is super fun and just how my brain works. So if that's something you're interested in, make sure to check out the description down below. Third thing I recommend you check out is the Balance Teacher event. This is a free 3-day event, kind of like a series where I'm going to do much longer content and more depth content about how to create a teacher work-life balance and to consistently leave at contract time. So make sure to check that out if you want to go on a journey with me to consistently leaving at contract time and creating that work-life balance and becoming the balanced teacher you were meant and destined to be and make the impact you were destined to be. All right, that wraps up my 15-minute morning routine and my 15-minute closing out routine to consistently leaving at contract time. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. Make sure to check out part 4 of this series. As always, remember, we are stronger together, and I'll see you in the next one, Teacher Bestie. Bye.